Eli had always been someone who loved the quiet of the open land. The hills, the winding rivers, and the wide sky called to him in a way that the busy towns never could. He had grown up hearing stories of the mountains and forests around him, and he knew every path, every hidden stream, and every small creature that scuttled through the underbrush. On this day, the sun hung high in the sky, spilling warm golden light across the rocky terrain. Birds sang their morning songs, and the wind whispered through the tall grass. Eli was carrying a small pack filled with supplies for a settlement a few miles away. He walked carefully but confidently, his boots crunching over the dry leaves and small stones, enjoying the peace that came with solitude. As he followed the trail along a narrow canyon, Eli heard something that immediately caught his attention. It was a scream, high-pitched and sharp, filled with fear and pain. His heart jumped, and he froze for a moment, listening carefully. The echo of the cry bounced off the canyon walls, making it hard to tell exactly where it came from. Then, before he could think twice, he ran toward the sound, his legs moving quickly over the uneven ground. Every instinct told him to hurry. Someone was in trouble. As Eli rounded a bend in the path, he saw her. A young woman lay on the ground, her face pale, her body trembling. A long, thin rattlesnake had coiled near her ankle, its fangs still glinting in the sunlight. The sight made his stomach tighten. But he didn't hesitate. He carefully stepped closer, keeping his eyes on the snake while speaking softly to calm the woman. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'm here to help. Stay still." He remembered the lessons his grandfather had taught him about snake bites, how panic made things worse, and how a steady hand could make all the difference. He quickly scanned the bite, noting its location and the swelling that had already begun to spread. He tore a piece of cloth from his pack and began to make a tight band around her leg, above the bite, to slow the venom from moving too quickly. He worked carefully, not wanting to hurt her further, and spoke in a calm voice to keep her from panicking. The woman's eyes fluttered open, and she looked at him with a mixture of fear and relief. "Please, help me," she whispered, her voice weak. Eli nodded. "I'm going to take care of you," he said. "You're going to be okay. Just stay calm." He reached into his pack and pulled out a small bottle of herbal tincture, a mixture he had learned to prepare from the elders in his village. It wasn't a guaranteed cure, but it could help slow the effects of the venom until proper help arrived. He dabbed the mixture carefully on the bite and then wrapped the area with clean cloth. All the while, he kept talking to her, telling her small stories and asking her to focus on his voice, anything to keep her mind from the pain spreading through her leg. After a few tense minutes, the woman's breathing began to slow, and the trembling in her body eased slightly. She tried to sit up, but Eli gently pushed her back down. "Not yet," he said kindly. "You need to rest. You're safe now." He looked around, realizing that help from her family might not arrive immediately. He decided he would stay by her side, making sure she stayed conscious and stable. Soon, the sound of running footsteps reached them. Her sisters appeared, rushing over with expressions of alarm and relief. They had seen the snake and were terrified for her. But when they saw Eli crouched beside her, carefully tending to her wound, their fear turned into surprise. He had stayed calm when they themselves were panicking. He had handled the situation with skill and care. One of the sisters stepped forward, her eyes narrowed slightly, studying him carefully. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice sharp but curious. Eli looked up and smiled gently. "My name is Eli. I was passing through when I heard her scream. I couldn't just stand by." The sisters exchanged glances. They were grateful, yes, but they were also cautious. It was not common for a stranger to enter their territory and handle something so serious without causing trouble. They knelt beside their sister, helping her to sit up more comfortably while still keeping a careful watch on Eli. They asked questions about the snake, about the herbs he used, and about how he had known what to do. Eli answered each question patiently, explaining that he had learned these things from his family and from years of observing nature closely. Aylin, the woman who had been bitten, finally found her voice. "Thank you," she said softly. Her eyes filled with genuine gratitude. Eli smiled and nodded. You're welcome. You were very brave to stay calm. That helped a lot. She managed a small smile, feeling a mix of embarrassment and relief. She had been terrified, but his calm presence had kept her from panicking. The sisters still looked cautious, but they could not hide their admiration for Eli's courage. They spoke quietly among themselves, discussing what had just happened. They knew their traditions, and they knew that a life saved was a serious matter, but it did not automatically mean a stranger could become part of their family. They would need to decide how to respond, and Eli respected that. He did not push or demand anything. He simply stayed where he was, keeping an eye on Aelin and offering gentle words to reassure her. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the canyon, Eli helped the sisters lift Aelin onto a makeshift stretcher so they could carry her back to their village. He walked alongside them, carrying some of the supplies and making sure they moved safely along the rocky path. The journey was slow, but there was a sense of quiet understanding forming between them. Eli had proven that he could act with skill, courage, and respect, and that had earned him a small measure of trust. By the time they reached the village, Aelin was resting comfortably, and the sisters had begun to speak more openly to Eli, asking about his life and where he had come from. Eli answered honestly, sharing stories of his travels and the lessons he had learned in the hills and forests of his home. The sisters listened, intrigued, and slowly, the tension that had been in the air began to ease. They could see that Eli was not just brave, he was thoughtful, respectful, and capable of caring for others without expecting anything in return. That evening, as the sun set and the sky turned brilliant shades of orange and pink, Eli sat quietly outside the small dwelling where Aelin was recovering. The sisters watched him from a distance, still cautious but increasingly impressed by his patience and humility. They knew that their tradition would require more than just one act of bravery before he could be considered worthy of marrying Aelin. But this first encounter had laid the foundation. Eli had shown that he could be trusted in a moment of real danger, and that was something they could not ignore. For Eli, the day had been unexpected and full of tension, but it had also been deeply meaningful. He realized that helping someone in need, without thought of reward, was a kind of courage that mattered more than any skill or strength he could show. And for Aelin and her sisters, the day had been a reminder that bravery, kindness, and respect could sometimes come from the most unexpected places. As night fell and the stars began to appear one by one in the clear sky, Eli felt a quiet sense of connection to this place and these people. He did not yet know what the future would hold, but he knew that he had made a difference that day. And sometimes, that was the first step toward something much greater. After that day, Eli remained in the village for a little while, helping wherever he could, and learning more about the people around him. He wanted to make sure Aelin was completely safe and recovering well, and he also felt a strong curiosity about their customs and way of life. The village was small but full of life, surrounded by rolling hills and dotted with huts made from wood and clay. Smoke curled lazily from the chimneys as families cooked their meals, and children ran through the open spaces laughing and playing games passed down from their ancestors. Everything felt alive and connected to the land. Aelin's sisters, though still cautious, watched Eli closely. They had never encountered someone like him before. He was not only brave, but he carried himself with respect, never demanding anything, never speaking harshly, and always ready to help. They could see that he was sincere, but in their tradition, sincerity alone was not enough. A man who wished to become part of their family, especially as a husband to Aelin, had to prove himself worthy through tests that measured more than courage. These tests were a blend of skill, intelligence, humility, and patience, qualities that showed a man could not only protect but also honor and care for their loved ones. One morning, as Eli was helping repair a broken fence near the edge of the village, Aelin's eldest sister approached him. Her steps were firm, and her gaze serious. But there was no anger in her expression. "Eli," she said, "you have shown courage and kindness, and we are grateful. But our customs must be respected. You cannot simply wish to marry Aelin. You must first prove that you are worthy." Eli paused, listening carefully. He nodded slowly, understanding the importance of their traditions. "I understand," he replied respectfully. "I will do whatever you ask. I only wish to honor your family and Aelin." The sister's eyes softened slightly. "Then you must be ready," she said. "The tests are not easy, and they will challenge you in ways you may not expect. You must show skill, patience, and respect for our ways. Only then can we consider you." Eli's heart sank for a moment, but only slightly. He had expected that nothing worthwhile would come easily, and he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. The first test was a test of skill and resourcefulness. Eli was asked to help in the hunt for food. Not in a way that he might be used to, but using the methods that the village relied on. The hunters used traps, knowledge of animal habits, and patience, rather than force. Eli had hunted before, but never like this. He observed the experienced hunters, learning their techniques, how they read the signs of the forest, how they moved silently without disturbing the wildlife, and how they respected the animals they caught by giving thanks. For days, Eli practiced under their watchful eyes. He stumbled at first, making mistakes and frightening some of the animals away. But he did not give up. He listened, watched, and tried again, gradually improving. The sisters observed him closely, noting not just his ability to hunt but the humility with which he accepted guidance and correction. They wanted to see that he could learn, adapt, and work with others, rather than trying to force his own way. By the end of the week, Eli had caught a small deer using a trap he had carefully set, earning quiet nods of approval from those who had guided him. Next came a test of understanding and respect for the traditions of the village. Eli was asked to participate in crafting and daily chores, something he had never thought much about before. He learned to weave baskets, gather herbs, and prepare food in the traditional manner. It was not just about performing the tasks. It was about learning the meaning behind them, understanding the history and care embedded in each action. The sisters watched as Eli listened attentively, asking questions respectfully and following instructions carefully. He did not mock or dismiss any part of the process, no matter how small or repetitive it seemed. And this impressed them greatly. Eli also spent time learning the stories of the village. The elders told tales of courage, wisdom, and respect for nature. And Eli listened with genuine interest. He asked questions, showing that he valued not just the practical skills but the lessons carried in their stories. By paying attention to these details, he demonstrated patience, thoughtfulness, and a desire to truly understand the world he had entered. The sisters noted this carefully. They were not only seeking a brave man but one who could respect and uphold their values. As days turned into weeks, Eli faced the next test, which focused on character. The villagers had small challenges and tasks that required honesty, kindness, and consistency. For example, when a child lost a small but precious toy, Eli spent hours helping to find it, refusing to leave until the child was happy. When a family struggled to carry water from the river during a hot day, he helped without complaint, even though it was hard work. Every action, no matter how small, mattered. The sisters watched as Eli consistently chose to act with integrity, not for praise or reward, but because it was the right thing to do. Meanwhile, Aelin observed Eli quietly from a distance. She had been grateful to him for saving her life, but she was also cautious. She had seen many men claim to care, only to let selfishness guide their actions. But as she watched him work patiently and respectfully, she began to feel a quiet admiration for his character. He was not seeking to impress her with words or gifts. He showed care through action, proving that he understood what it meant to value another person's life and happiness. One evening, as the sun began to set and paint the village in soft orange and pink, Aelin's sisters gathered Eli quietly. "You have done well so far," they said. "You have shown skill, patience, and respect. But there is still one more trial, and it is the most important. You must show that your care for Aelin is genuine, that your heart is true and selfless. Only then can we consider you worthy." Eli listened carefully, understanding the weight of their words. He did not flinch or argue. Instead, he bowed his head in respect. "I understand," he said. "I will do what is required. I only wish to honor your family and Aelin, and I promise to do my best." The sisters nodded, satisfied with his humility. They would now watch him in his most personal test. One that would reveal not just his strength or skill, but the true depth of his character and intentions. Eli, too, felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. He knew this final challenge would not be easy. But he also knew that honesty, patience, and respect had brought him this far, and they would carry him through the last trial as well. As night fell, the village settled into calm, the fires casting gentle shadows, and Eli reflected on the journey so far. Each test had taught him something new, not just about the skills required, but about the importance of understanding, patience, and humility. He realized that proving worthiness was not just about impressing others, but about showing consistent respect and care through actions. He also understood that he was beginning to form a connection with Aelin and her sisters. Not through words or promises, but through shared experiences, effort, and trust. Eli went to sleep that night with a quiet sense of purpose. He was ready to face the next challenge, whatever it might be. And deep in his heart, he knew that the trials were shaping him not just for the approval of Aelin's family, but into a person who could truly honor and protect someone he cared about. For Eli, this was more than a test of courage or skill, it was a test of his heart, and he was determined to pass it. The days that followed were filled with lessons, effort, and a quiet tension that hung in the air like the soft mist in the early morning. Eli had already proven his courage and patience, and he had shown respect for the customs and values of the village. But now, the sisters were preparing him for trials that tested not just skill or understanding, but his character under pressure. This stage of the challenge was meant to see if he could truly integrate into their way of life and demonstrate that his intentions were genuine. Early one morning, the eldest sister approached Eli with a calm but serious expression. "You have done well so far," she said. "Now you must face a trial that will measure your strength, your perseverance, and your respect for the world around you. It will not be easy, and you may struggle. But how you act in struggle will show your worth." Eli nodded, feeling a mixture of determination and nervousness. He had expected that the path to proving himself would be difficult, and now he was ready to face this next challenge with patience and courage. The first part of this trial was physical but subtle, requiring keen observation and strategy. Eli was tasked with assisting in the collection of food and supplies from the surrounding forest. But he was not given direct guidance. Instead, he was to rely on his own judgment while still respecting the natural balance around him. He carefully scanned the trees and bushes for fruits, herbs, and edible roots. He followed the signs of animals to locate fresh water, and learned to move silently so as not to disturb the birds and small creatures that shared the land. Each step required concentration and thought. A wrong move could damage the plants or alert the animals he depended on. As he worked, the sisters watched him closely. They noted that he did not rush or act carelessly. He paused often, studying the forest and thinking before each action. He helped gather wild berries and carefully dug up edible roots without harming the surrounding plants. He even noticed a small injured bird and gently tended to its wing, showing that his concern extended beyond human life to all creatures around him. By the end of the day, he had collected more than enough supplies. But more importantly, he had done it with respect, patience, and thoughtfulness, a combination that impressed the sisters deeply. The next challenge was more communal. Eli was asked to help repair parts of the village that had been damaged in recent storms. Roofs needed fixing, fences had collapsed, and irrigation channels were clogged. This was not a test of strength alone. It required cooperation, careful planning, and consideration for how his actions affected others. Eli worked alongside villagers of all ages, listening to their advice, sharing tools, and offering assistance wherever it was needed. He did not seek praise or recognition. He simply focused on doing the work well and helping the community. During these days of labor, Eli also began to form quiet bonds with the people of the village. Children followed him, curious about his work, and he patiently taught them small skills, like how to tie knots or collect herbs safely. He shared stories of his own childhood, laughing and listening to theirs. These interactions revealed a softer side of Eli, one that the sisters valued just as much as his courage or skill. They observed that he could lead when necessary, guide gently, and still remain humble, a balance that was rare and precious in any person. One afternoon, the sisters presented Eli with a task that required both ingenuity and courage. A stream that provided water to part of the village had become blocked by fallen branches and rocks. The villagers needed the water to irrigate their fields, but removing the obstacles was dangerous because the current was strong, and the rocks were unstable. Eli did not hesitate. He carefully examined the flow of the water and developed a plan. With patient effort, he moved the debris, piece by piece, working in collaboration with others. He used ropes and simple tools to secure the rocks before attempting to remove them. By the end of the day, the water flowed freely again, and the sisters watched silently, impressed by both his courage and careful thinking. But the most challenging part of the trial was yet to come. Eli now faced a test of his patience and empathy. The sisters asked him to spend time with the village elders, listening to their stories, learning the lessons embedded in their experiences, and reflecting on their meaning. At first, Eli was nervous. He was not used to listening for hours without speaking, and he feared he might make a mistake or offend someone. But as he sat with the elders, he began to realize that this trial was about more than listening. It was about understanding the heart of a community and showing respect for the wisdom that came from experience. Each evening, Eli would return to Aelin, speaking softly to her, asking about her recovery, and making sure she was comfortable. He did not overwhelm her with words or seek to impress her with stories of his bravery. Instead, he focused on small acts of care, fetching water for her, bringing her favorite herbs, or simply sitting beside her when she needed company. Aelin began to notice these gestures, and a quiet trust began to grow between them. She realized that Eli's care was consistent and thoughtful, not fleeting or performative. She felt safe and valued in his presence, and this subtle bond strengthened as the days passed. The sisters, ever observant, now began to test Eli in ways that measured his consistency over time. They would create situations where he had to make choices, sometimes difficult ones, between convenience and the right action. For instance, one day, a disagreement arose between two villagers over the use of a limited resource. Eli could have avoided involvement, but instead, he stepped in calmly, listening to both sides and helping them find a fair solution. Another day, a storm threatened the village crops, and Eli worked tirelessly alongside others to protect them. Despite the rain and mud, each choice he made, each act of selflessness, revealed more about his character and earned the quiet approval of the sisters. Through all of these challenges, Eli never wavered in his respect for Aelin. He did not try to rush the process or force a connection. Instead, he allowed the relationship to grow naturally, showing kindness, patience, and humility. Aelin's sisters noticed this, and their respect for him deepened. They whispered among themselves, acknowledging that he was not only brave and skilled, but also capable of caring for their sister with sincerity and consistency. By the end of this phase of the trials, Eli had demonstrated not just courage or intelligence, but a deep and enduring commitment to doing what was right. He had faced physical challenges, intellectual challenges, and moral challenges, and in each case, he had acted with integrity. The sisters now prepared him for the final test, the most personal and meaningful of all. It would require him to demonstrate that his love for Aelin was genuine, selfless, and ready to endure challenges for the sake of her well-being and the harmony of the community. Eli, though tired from the many days of effort, felt ready. He had learned that proving oneself was not about grand gestures or fleeting heroism. It was about showing care and respect consistently, day after day. He understood that the final test would measure his heart, and he was determined to meet it with honesty and humility. He had grown through these trials, learning not only the customs of the village but also the importance of patience, empathy, and true respect for others. As the sun set on another long day, painting the sky with hues of gold and purple, Eli sat quietly near the edge of the village. He reflected on all that had happened, the challenges, the lessons, and the small victories. He thought about Aelin, about the trust they had begun to build, and about the journey ahead. Deep in his heart, he knew that the final trial would reveal whether his intentions and character were strong enough to be honored by the village and accepted by Aelin's family. Eli was ready. He had proven his courage, his skill, his patience, and his respect for the customs of the village. Now, it was time to show the most important quality of all, that his heart was true, that his care for Aelin and her family was selfless, and that he was worthy of the trust and love they might one day give him fully. The final trial had arrived, and Eli knew that this challenge would be unlike any he had faced before. All the skills, courage, and patience he had demonstrated so far had brought him to this moment, but now the focus was not on what he could do for himself, or even for Aelin alone. It was on what he could do for the community, for her family, and for the well-being of everyone around him. This trial was the test of heart, designed to see whether Eli's intentions were pure, selfless, and enduring. Early that morning, Aelin's eldest sister approached him with a quiet, measured expression. "Eli," she said, "you have shown skill, courage, and respect. You have learned to live among us and honor our ways. But the final trial is the most important. You must show that your love and care for Aelin are selfless. You must perform actions that benefit our family and community, not for reward or recognition, but because they are right and necessary." Eli nodded solemnly. He had thought about this moment many times, and he understood what was being asked of him. "I understand," he said. "I will do what is asked, and I will do my best to honor your family and the community." The first task of this trial required both ingenuity and selflessness. A section of the village's irrigation system had been damaged during a recent storm. Water that was meant to nourish the crops now pooled in the wrong places, threatening both the fields and the homes nearby. Eli was asked to repair the system, but there were no clear instructions. He had to figure out the problem, plan a solution, and execute it carefully. Eli studied the irrigation channels, tracing the flow of water from its source. He noticed where debris had blocked the current and where broken wooden channels had caused leaks. Without hesitation, he rolled up his sleeves and began working. Using simple tools, ropes, and his knowledge of physics and nature, he carefully moved rocks, replaced broken wood, and cleared the debris. Villagers joined him, but he directed them gently, showing patience and respect for their methods. The work was exhausting, the sun hot, and the mud thick, but Eli never complained. By the end of the day, water flowed smoothly through the channels, reaching every field that depended on it. The villagers were relieved, and the sisters watched in silent admiration, noting his effort, humility, and focus on the greater good rather than personal glory. Next, Eli faced a challenge that required emotional intelligence and empathy. The village had experienced tension recently because of a dispute between two families over land use. Aelin's sisters asked him to mediate, listening to both sides, understanding their concerns, and helping them reach a fair and peaceful resolution. Eli approached the task with care. He did not take sides or try to dominate the conversation. Instead, he listened patiently, acknowledged each person's feelings, and asked questions that encouraged understanding rather than conflict. After several hours of calm discussion and careful reasoning, the families reached an agreement. Guided by Eli's diplomacy and fairness, the sisters were impressed by his ability to handle conflict thoughtfully and compassionately, showing that his care extended beyond Aelin to the entire community. Amid these tasks, Eli also found moments to support Aelin personally. He would check on her each day, helping her with small chores, bringing her water, and offering gentle words of encouragement. He never sought to impose himself or speak of his own desires. Instead, he focused on her comfort, her recovery, and her sense of safety. Aelin began to notice these small acts of care, feeling a growing sense of trust and quiet admiration for him. She realized that Eli's attention was consistent and sincere. It was not performative or fleeting. His heart, she could see, was truly focused on helping and protecting those he cared about. One afternoon, the sisters presented Eli with another test of selflessness. A heavy storm had threatened the village's crops again, and some of the fields were at risk of being washed away. Eli was asked to lead the effort to save them. Even though it meant long hours of backbreaking labor under the rain, without hesitation, he waded into the muddy fields, working tirelessly alongside others to secure the soil, divert water, and protect the plants. He guided the villagers patiently, encouraging them when fatigue set in, and never complaining about the grueling work himself. By the time the storm passed, the fields were safe, and the sisters watched quietly, knowing that his perseverance and selflessness had been genuine. But the final and most personal part of the trial awaited. The sisters asked Eli to show that his care for Aelin was selfless and enduring. They told him he must perform a task that benefited her family without expectation of reward or recognition, and without any personal gain. Eli reflected deeply on this. He understood that proving love and commitment was not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It was about consistent, thoughtful action that prioritized others over oneself. Eli chose to help repair an aging part of the village, a small but vital communal structure that provided storage for food and supplies. The work was difficult and required precision, but he approached it with patience and care. He labored long hours, often alone, making sure that the structure would be strong and safe for everyone. The villagers noticed his dedication, some offering help, others quietly observing. All saw that Eli was not seeking attention or praise. He was motivated purely by the desire to do what was right. During these days, Eli also spent time learning more about Aelin's life, her dreams, and her fears. He listened attentively when she spoke, offering comfort and understanding without judgment. He did not rush her or impose his own ideas. He simply provided support and presence. Aelin began to feel a deep sense of connection with him, recognizing that his care was constant, thoughtful, and rooted in respect. His actions were proof that his intentions were genuine. By the end of the trial, Eli had demonstrated something rare and powerful, a combination of courage, patience, humility, and selfless care. He had faced physical challenges, intellectual problems, and emotional tasks, and in each, he had acted with integrity and respect. Aelin's sisters, who had observed him throughout every moment, now saw clearly that he was worthy. He had proven that he could care for Aelin not just in moments of excitement or danger but consistently, day after day, for the good of her and her community. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm golden light over the village, Aelin's sisters gathered with her and Eli. They looked at him with a mixture of seriousness and admiration. "Eli," the eldest sister said, "you have shown skill, courage, respect, and a heart that is true. You have proven yourself worthy of our trust and our sister's care. We see now that your intentions are sincere, and your character is strong. You have earned the right to be part of this family." Eli felt a quiet joy but did not rush to speak. He bowed his head in gratitude, knowing that words alone could not express the respect and appreciation he felt. "Thank you," he said softly. "I am honored by your trust and your guidance. I promise to continue to act with care, respect, and humility." Aelin, who had watched him quietly throughout the trials, stepped forward. Her eyes shone with a mixture of relief, admiration, and affection. She had seen his courage, his patience, and his kindness. More importantly, she had seen the consistency of his care and the honesty of his heart. She smiled gently, acknowledging the bond that had grown between them during these challenging days. Eli returned her smile, feeling a deep sense of connection and understanding. The village, too, began to accept him more fully. His actions had shown that he could be trusted, not just as a hero in one moment, but as a steady, caring presence in the lives of those around him. Children played near him without fear. Elders spoke with him openly, and the community started to view him as someone who belonged not by chance, but by merit and integrity. That night, as the village settled under a sky filled with stars, Eli reflected on the journey he had undertaken. He realized that proving worthiness was not about a single heroic act, but about consistent effort, respect for others, and selfless care. He had learned that love and trust were built slowly, through actions, patience, and humility. And in Aelin, he had found someone whose quiet strength matched his own, someone who valued honesty, respect, and consistency above all else. Eli knew that the trials were not just about proving himself to the sisters, they had also shaped him into a better person. He had learned the importance of patience, empathy, and humility. And he understood that true love was shown not in words, but in steady, selfless actions. He felt ready for whatever came next, confident that the bond he and Aelin had formed was strong, honest, and built on a foundation of respect and care. With the trials behind him, Eli felt a deep sense of calm and fulfillment. He had faced every challenge with courage, patience, and respect, and he had proven to Aelin's family and to himself that his heart was true. But now came the final and most joyful part of his journey, the acceptance and celebration of his union with Aelin. This was a moment that would mark the beginning of a new chapter in both their lives, one built on trust, understanding, and the experiences they had shared together. The village buzzed with quiet excitement as preparations began. The sisters took the lead, organizing a small but meaningful ceremony to honor Eli's courage and dedication. They called upon the elders to bless the event, and neighbors joined to offer food, songs, and decorations. Every action was done with care, reflecting the deep respect for tradition that had guided the village for generations. Eli, though filled with nervous anticipation, felt a profound sense of belonging. He was no longer a stranger. Through his actions, he had become part of a community, and that was a gift far greater than any reward he could have imagined. On the morning of the ceremony, Eli rose early to help with the final preparations. He carried bundles of fresh flowers to decorate the central area, assisted in arranging seating for the elders, and even helped set up a small altar where blessings and offerings would be made. His attention to detail was meticulous, not because he wanted to impress anyone, but because he genuinely cared about the happiness of the family and the well-being of the village. As he worked, Aelin watched quietly from a distance, her eyes soft with affection and admiration. She saw not just his physical effort but the thoughtfulness in every movement, and her respect for him deepened. When the villagers gathered, the atmosphere was warm and joyful. Children ran between the adults, laughing and playing, while the elders sat with gentle smiles, observing the culmination of weeks of trials and effort. Aelin's sisters stood beside her, their expressions a mixture of pride, relief, and happiness. They had watched Eli grow through each challenge, and now they could finally recognize the depth of his character. They knew that he had earned his place, not through a single act of bravery, but through consistent care, respect, and selfless dedication. The ceremony began with a simple ritual, guided by the elders. They spoke of the importance of trust, respect, and love in any relationship, emphasizing that a strong bond is built through patience and understanding, rather than haste. Eli and Aelin stood side by side, listening intently, feeling the weight and significance of the moment. When the time came for their vows, Eli spoke with quiet sincerity. "I promise to care for Aelin with honesty, patience, and respect. I will honor her, her family, and this community, and I will always act with love and integrity." Aelin responded with equal sincerity. "I promise to share my life with Eli with trust, kindness, and respect. I will support him, and together, we will face challenges with courage and understanding." Their words were simple, yet they carried the weight of their experiences and the lessons they had learned during the trials. They were not empty promises. They were commitments forged through shared challenges, care, and understanding. After the vows, the elders blessed the union, placing their hands over Eli and Aelin and offering prayers for happiness, health, and harmony. The sisters smiled warmly, feeling a sense of relief and pride. They had seen Eli's heart and character through every trial, and now they could fully embrace him as part of their family. The villagers joined in the celebration, singing songs of joy, drumming rhythms that echoed across the hills, and sharing food that had been prepared with care. The atmosphere was one of communal happiness, marking not just a marriage, but the acceptance of Eli into a new life filled with shared responsibilities, love, and trust. Throughout the day, Eli and Aelin moved among the villagers, expressing gratitude and receiving warm congratulations. They laughed and shared stories, the bonds between them and the community growing even stronger. Eli felt a sense of fulfillment that went beyond his initial desire to prove himself. He realized that the trials had not just been about winning approval, they had taught him about patience, empathy, humility, and the importance of consistent, selfless care. He had grown as a person, and now he was ready to build a life with Aelin based on those very principles. As evening approached, the celebration shifted to a quieter, more intimate setting. The couple walked together along the edge of the village, where the hills met the sky, and the stars began to twinkle above them. The air was cool and filled with the scent of flowers and fresh earth. Eli took Aelin's hand gently, and she rested her head on his shoulder. They spoke softly about the journey they had shared, reflecting on the challenges and lessons of the past weeks. "You have changed me," Aelin said quietly, looking up at him. "Not just because of what you did for me, but because of who you are. Your patience, your kindness, your care, it has touched me deeply." Eli smiled, feeling a warmth in his chest that he had never experienced before. "And you have changed me too," he replied. "You have taught me about trust, courage, and the quiet strength that comes from care and understanding. I promise to always honor that every day of our lives." In the days that followed, Eli and Aelin began to settle into their life together. They worked alongside the villagers, continuing to contribute to the community, sharing responsibilities, and supporting each other in both small tasks and larger challenges. Eli's presence brought a sense of stability and care that strengthened not only his bond with Aelin, but also the connections within the village. Aelin, too, shared her skills, knowledge, and warmth, helping Eli understand more about the traditions and values of her people. Together, they became a team, respected and loved by all who knew them. The story of Eli saving Aelin and proving his worthiness spread throughout the surrounding areas. It was told as a tale of courage, patience, and the true meaning of love. People admired the way he had approached the trials, not seeking fame or reward, but acting with consistent kindness, respect, and selflessness. Aelin's family shared the story with younger generations, emphasizing the lessons learned. That trust and love are earned through actions. That patience and humility matter as much as bravery, and that selfless care is the greatest proof of worthiness. As seasons passed, Eli and Aelin continued to grow together. They faced challenges, as all couples do, but the foundation they had built through trials, care, and respect allowed them to navigate difficulties with understanding and patience. Their life together became a testament to the power of perseverance, honesty, and genuine care, and their bond inspired others in the village to act with similar integrity and kindness in their own lives. Looking back, Eli realized that the journey had been about far more than winning the approval of Aelin's family. It had been a journey of growth, learning the value of humility, the importance of listening and understanding, and the deep satisfaction that comes from acting with a true and selfless heart. Aelin, too, cherished the lessons of patience, trust, and discernment she had learned, recognizing that love is strongest when it is proven through consistent, thoughtful action rather than fleeting gestures. In the end, Eli and Aelin's story became a living example of how courage, respect, patience, and selflessness could bring people together in lasting bonds. Their love was not only celebrated in that village but remembered in stories passed down through generations. It was a love forged in challenge, strengthened by understanding, and sustained by a commitment to act with integrity every day. And so, under the vast sky and among the rolling hills, Eli and Aelin lived their lives together, building a home filled with warmth, respect, and care. They nurtured their bond with kindness, supported each other in every trial, and honored the community that had guided them through the journey. Their story remained a shining example that true worthiness and love are proven not through a single act, but through consistent, selfless, and thoughtful living.